from the Ashes one band. Bassist Craig Hutchins, guitarist Roger Donaldson, and Bill Ketchum continued on. Eventually, Bill found drummer Gary Stalter. The year was 2001.
Mindseed actually stemmed from I played in a band called Dropbox with Chris Tennant, Garrett White, Bill Ketchum, Craig Hutchins. And they were a cover band, had like a couple of original tunes. And they just kind of weren't going anywhere. There was another guy that come in and out, played guitar for them, but they needed me to come in and asked me to come in and play a little bit of guitar with them for a couple of shows that they had booked. And well, in the short time that I was in that band, I apparently wreaked enough havoc on it where as soon as we got done with those shows, that band broke up. So a couple of weeks go by and Craig and Bill call me up, who were not the two people that I was expecting to jam with out of that band going into it. But coming out of it, they called me up and they were like, hey, we like some of the original stuff that you were showing us, and you know, what do you think about getting together and maybe doing some stuff, seeing where we go? Because Craig and Bill had jammed together for a while and they kind of had some chemistry together. They were friends. So I was like, yeah, you know, I had, while we were still doing the Dropbox thing, I had shown them like the very beginning stages of the song Two Steps from Postal, which in the beginning, really cool kind of vibe from where they were coming from, and it was really where I wanted to go musically, and especially if I was playing guitar. I had done like 9 years of bass and a bunch of other bands, so I was kind of learning to play the guitar and figuring out my sound, and showed them these couple things and they were really geeked about it, so there was some cool chemistry going into it. We started jamming in Craig's basement, and as soon as we get down there, you know, it's like electricity going off. Just started writing and brainstorming, and Bill found Gary. I don't remember the story behind all of that. I think it was like through a work thing. Hooked up with Gary, and he come over and checked us out, and then automatically wanted to bring over his kit. So we started being able to write with 2 guitar players, a bass player, drummer. We kind of fumbled around with some vocals. Craig had done some vocal work. So anyways, the origins of Mindseed come from a crappy cover band called Dropbox. And when we first started playing, there was no name or anything like that. We just started writing, and I think at that point it was just you know, right place, right time, right people, and that's the actual origin of my Mindseed.
Mindseed, formed from the ashes of Dropbox, I want to say. It was Chris Tennant, Garrett White, Bill Ketchum, and me. I think there was somebody else there for a while, but I can't remember. Oh, and then Roger came into it. And Bill, Roger, and I decided we were just really sick of playing covers, so we got out of Dropbox and formed Mindseed because we wanted to write original music, because that's what I like to do. So Bill, Roger, and I formed Mindseed in my basement, and then after we were practicing for a couple weeks, a guy from work had told Bill about Gary, this drummer he knew, so we thought, well, we'll give him a shot, see what he's like, because drummers are hard to find. Gary fit in really good with us, and at that point we just kind of started writing more music, and at that point I was singing and it just wasn't working, so we wanted to bring in some other aspects, so that's when we brought in Charlie, and Charlie started singing for us, but Bill just had a lot of problems at the time, going through a divorce, stuff with his kids, so he just couldn't do it anymore, so he kind of called it quits. So at that point we dropped down to a 4.
Well, I was working at the casino at the time, and I met up with some people and was kind of jamming a little bit, had a drum set at my house, and Bill Ketchum came and asked me if I wanted to play in a band, but he heard I play drums. So I said, yeah, sure, I'll come check it out. So I did, and I joined a band with no name.
For a while, things were looking good until outside distractions overtook Bill's attention. He left the band. The remaining 3 continued to write and rehearse their music, and in the winter of 2002, they brought in Charlie Kole on vocals. Having played in different bands with both Craig and Roger, it was a natural fit.
Bill left on partial creative and partial personal reasons. It was a very unfortunate departure, really tough because he was one of the core members, but at that point he had enough stuff going on where it was more of a distraction to have him than anything else. And then, you know, once we kind of made the break and stuff like that, there was no hard feelings, and we kind of just had to go from there. But that's why Bill left the band.
Charlie and I jammed together back when we worked at Little Caesars together with Chris Kole. We kind of formed in and out of a bunch of different bands. We were like, I think I want to say I was like 19 or 20 at the time. It was a long time ago. But Charlie and I always played really good together. I mean, he was playing guitar at the time. I was always on bass, and you know, we'd switch back and forth with some vocals on some stuff, and we just always fit good. We've always played good together, and we always kind of knew where the other person was going, so it was never a problem.
I was playing bass for the Government Cheese Project, and my buddy Roger and Craig, I knew both of them. I'd played in bands with both of them. Craig back in the mid-90s, we were jamming together. Me and Roger, the late 90s. So Roger says, why don't you come hang out with this group I got going on? So I go with him to Craig's basement where they were jamming, and I would sit in and hum melody lines for them while they were writing music. And eventually I just got absorbed into the Mindseed. And at that time, we weren't called Mindseed. We didn't have a name. It was Craig, Roger, me, Gary, and Bill. Bill, I went to high school with Bill. And he eventually left the band.
The Reverend and I go back. We had a mutual job doing a graveyard gig, working late nights, and just through kind of casual conversation, he was playing guitar. Charlie was playing guitar with, and I don't want to get into the long version of that story. He's playing guitar with another guy and drummer. And we got to talking, and I had my ex-girlfriend worked with or went to school with the other guitar player's girlfriend, and it was just sheer coincidence that small world syndrome. We knew all the same people. So I go and play bass for those guys, and then I wish we had time for the Bloody Knuckles Charlie Kole story. That story should live on forever. But I jammed with that band for a while, and then that band breaks up. And Charlie and I, well, yeah, coming out of that band was not the guy that I thought I was going to be jamming with after that band broke up. We had a really cool drummer, Tim Harris, badass drummer, and then going into the next band, Tim was on board with Charlie, and Nick, initially the other guitar player, asked me about jamming with him, and he just kind of procrastinated on some shit. So Charlie asked me one time if I wanted to come out and jam with him and Tim, and we get to hitting the bottle, and I think we jammed for 5 or 6 years together easily, writing original music and doing some other stuff. And then Charlie and I had a little falling out, and Tim did a little prison time, and life happens, you know. Some of that shit's almost uncomfortable to talk about anymore, because you know, you get grateful for the things you have now, because you know, it's surprising you still have them through some of that stuff. You know, God bless my wife, because she's so tolerant of me and let me be a rock star for a really long time. And I put in one band Charlie and I were in. He was playing guitar, I was playing bass, Tim was playing drum. We had this crazy motherfucker Brian Koontz come sing for us. And man, it was like having another job, you know. We were putting in 40, 50 hours a week playing, and that finally took a toll on all of us. And Charlie and I, after Brian left the band, we tried to write some more with Tim, and Charlie and I had a little falling out. Wish there was more time for that story. So that band breaks up. Me and Charlie as friends. You know, I talk to Tim when I can talk to Tim. I love that guy still. You know, just musically very gifted. And kind of miss playing bass sometimes because of that. So then fast forward, right after the One More Left thing, I take like a 1.5 year hiatus, and I start picking at an acoustic guitar, still playing some bass, doing a couple other things, and just happened to bump into Craig and Bill and another guy we worked with doing the Dropbox thing. And then fast forward to Mindseed.
In February 2003, after months of hammering out their sound and trying to figure out what to call themselves, they finally agreed on Mindseed. Eddie LeBon joined the band in the summer of 2003. With him, he brought his electronica expertise. Also known as Weightless, his house beats would permeate every Mindseed song.
Eddie came into the band, we had finally come up with the name of Mindseed, and Eddie's a really good artist, and I brought him an idea of doing the head and the seed pod kind of deal. So, you know, it's a bunch of stuff we talked about at practices and whatever, and I took that idea and I took it to Ed. So he's the one that actually started the whole head deal there with the seed pod with the brains and etc. And then he kind of started coming and checking out practices and stuff, and kind of had the idea maybe we could do a little bit of electronica type stuff in the beginning of our songs or midway through songs, and just kind of work it in, because he was doing a whole lot of that with Fruity Loops there. It was sounding kind of cool.
Then we brought in Ed, for his electronica and the way that for the intros to the songs and stuff, and it worked out really good because they were awesome. Because Ed is really talented. But then after that, it all kind of went downhill. Ed got married, started a family, so he called it quits. You can't blame him because that's tough to do.
Ed's a cool guy. Know him through a bunch of mutual friends, and helped get him on board with Mindseed. Did our electronica section, and if you ever got a chance to see Mindseed live, the full setup with Weightless, probably our best shows. He did our intros, outros, some effects. Awesome guy, and then started his family and didn't have as much time, and then we went to the studio and dicked him over. If you listen to our studio demo, I think you could probably lay that down as the demise, because there was no Weightless, and you could tell we just didn't take our time with it. And I think part of that was, as much as it was joked about, there was a little part of Ed that, when he was straightforward with us about what we were doing. So Ed was just a guy that happened to be in the right place, right time, and did some really cool things for Mindseed. Mindseed could, there was a couple of shows down at Ode's Hidden Camel. Probably a couple of our best shows were actually at Ode's when we took Weightless down with us. So, thanks, Eddie.
Eddie LeBlanc, he joined the band 2004. It was mid 2000. He did all our intros and outros and added some electronica beats and stuff to the Mindseed experience. Real good guy. Crazy as all get the hell out. In fact, I think he was the one that introduced us to Crown Royal. Crown Royal is a crazy drug.
By the fall of 2003, the band would be complete with the addition of its sixth and final member, guitarist Fred Bailey.
Fred's another guy that I just met through some mutual people and at work, and he talked about how he was playing guitar by himself and had not really messed around with too many other people, but he felt really cool about some of his lead work. So I talked to him it was quite a long time, couple of months, if not longer than that. And finally, one time he had come out and seen us play, and I was like, hey, you should come sit down at one of our practices and just take a look-see, and maybe you could add another dimension to it. So we talk about it a couple of times, and then finally, he's like, hey, maybe I'll come out and check out one of your practices. And I was like, all right, well, bring your rig with you, and bring a guitar, and we'll put you right to work. And freaked him out a little bit, because like I said, he had never played band or anything like that, and come to find out, him and his dad really close. Talked to his dad about it, and was, go for it. He come out and could really play guitar, and we had him out a couple of times and talked about it, and we brought him in, and it was a process to work him in and show him all the material, but the guy can shred, man. Just an amazing guitar player. great guy to have around, and played hard through all of it. And then, I don't know, the last couple months that he played with us, I don't know if there was a disagreement or I don't know, but right before we went to the studio, he called us up, and I know he had a lot on his plate in his personal life. So, he just a couple months before we went in the studio, I think he called us up and was just like, "Hey, I can't do this anymore. I'm out." And about that time, I think everybody's getting burned out. So he stuck with us for a couple of years, and the guy's a really talented guitar player.
We just decided we needed another guitarist because just the sound wasn't full enough, and we needed somebody else who had some writing capabilities as well. And Roger had met Fred at work, and Fred had told him he played guitar, so we decided, we'll give him a shot, bring him out. Fred comes out, and he's a really good guitar player, and we wrote a couple of new songs, and we wrote Detroit with him off one of Fred's in a song called Chaos, where I was doing the two-handed tapping on bass, and Fred wrote the rhythm to that, and the way they meshed was really cool. And Fred had some personal issues, and he just didn't want to do it anymore. He just felt like he was kind of beating the same dead horse, which at the point I think we all got to. He just got there quicker than we did, so he called it quits, and we went to a four-piece. And
Fred joined the band. We were just kind of looking for something, another guitarist. Roger just wasn't cutting it. Oh, just kidding. I had to because he's such my buddy. Anyway, we had Fred come in and check it out, and Fred was somewhat new to the game. He had a lot of really pretty hot licks, and could play guitar pretty well, but it was the whole, I don't know, that it took him a little bit to get rolling, and we did. Then of course things happen and whatever, and people got to leave the band, so he left, and we marched forward.
Fred Bailey, he was brought in on guitars. Real quiet guy, kind of secluded himself. Great guitar player, great guy. He eventually left the band. I think there was some issue with his son or something. He had to leave the band, and then we were back to being the original four-piece. After Fred left the band, I ended up picking up a guitar and did some rhythm. I tried to do a little bit of lead work, but that was more Roger's part of it.
For the next 4 years, Mindseed toured the central mid-Michigan area bar scene, played and headlined festivals, beer tents, and at home parties, bringing their A game to every show, and as one reporter noted, they looked very professional and at home on the stage.
The original driving force behind it was we were coming out of the 90s into the early 2000 sounds, and all the stuff you heard on the radio was just this pussy ass, verse, chorus, bridge, chorus, 4.5 minute radio garbage. And when I sat down and talked with Craig and Bill that very first time, I was like, look, if I'm going to sit down and devote my time to something, I want it to be heavy and have some heart to it, and Craig kind of had some political issues that he had to work out back then, and he wanted to throw that in, and I was like, no, we really shouldn't go that route. I'm like, if you can be more subtle as opposed to like the Dave Mustaine, Megadeth, or fucking Ted Nugent, scream Republican on stage, if you can do it without doing that, I'll bite. But other than that, we're not doing political stuff. You know, I want to stick to something that's got some substance. You know, so we ended up with, and I hate to steal their term, you know, but it was kind of a sludgy, heavy stoner rock. I mean, there's nothing else that you can call it. I think, in a way, we kind of stepped out of bounds a little bit with some of the aggression that we played with, because I think creatively, if we could have learned to calm down a little bit and not have to have everything so epic and big, then we probably could have progressed and written a lot more material than we did. But I think for what we had, you know, we ran as far as we could with it, and then just it came to a halt. But somewhere between heavy, hard, and aggressive. We can't have called ourselves a metal band. Hard rock band if you were going to be generic, but an aggressive stony rock band. I guess Mindseed is the only word you can use to describe it.
Did a lot of screamo, and I'm not a screamer, so as far as the music, I liked the music. As far as the vocals, I was never very happy with doing the screaming. Hence the Crown Royal. I had to be just shit-faced to do what they wanted me to do, and it just sounded like ass every time. So, yeah, I'm not a screamer. But yeah, some people liked it. I don't know why. We had a following. There's 2-3 people.
You know, we tried. A lot of us liked the speed metal thing. A lot of us liked the you know, the jamming type stuff. We went through a couple members because of that. And I think the sound we ended up with was one of our own, very rhythmic kind of stuff. It was a fun sound. We tried to keep things up and going. As far as to put it to a genre, I don't think I could do that.
So when we initiated what we wanted for a sound, you know, and we come up with Mindseed, I kind of described it as you take this little kernel that we write as music, and like it or not, you know, one way or the other, you know, we're going to plant that seed, and you're going to have to flip the coin, and you're going to love it or you're going to hate it.
When we started writing songs, especially when we first began with Bill, we were kind of going the Megadeth way. It wasn't just 3 riffs as a song. We wanted 6 riffs. So we wanted an ever-changing song that wasn't the same from the beginning to the end. And you know, some people classify it as stoner rock. Some people apply it. You know, some of the songs are somewhat goth metal. You know, each person in the band had their own style, and when they wrote, that style came out. A couple of songs I had brought with me from other bands that I had wrote years ago, like Crack Messiah and Retribution. I had wrote those in other bands many years before, but those songs just kind of always stood the test of time, and we could just play them no matter what band I got in.
Mindseed continued touring as a 5-piece and worked on new material with a little over a year after Eddie left the band. Fred announced he was leaving due to some personal issues. Mindseed continued as a quartet, with Charlie playing rhythm guitar. January 2008, Mindseed began recording their self-titled debut EP at Guitar Sound Studio in Coleman, Michigan. The owner, David Malinek, who the guys deeply respected and admired, recorded and engineered the album. The guys were made to feel right at home. Dave was a most gracious host, and on many occasions he would have to physically remove the band members from the studio so he could get some sleep.
Those are kind of intense. being in the studio was a blast. I was amazed at how quick we did it, because I was expecting us each to have to do like 15, 16 takes for everything. But it usually broke down to like 3 or 4 takes, and we'd gotten it down. Dave was just incredible in working with us. He had so much patience, because we're 4 of the most irritating guys I've ever met. I mean, we drive everybody nuts. When it comes to music, we have such a high energy level that we just drive people nuts. But Dave kept corralling us and getting us on the right track and kept us going in the right direction, and it was a good experience. It was a really good experience.
The Mindseed studio sessions, they themselves should have been video documented. It was a learning experience for all of us who were experienced road musicians with very little studio time. It definitely gave us a reality of what we were. I mean, the recording doesn't lie. But on the other hand, we've recorded live shows where it doesn't quite capture the essence, but has captured the sound that I think has by far exceeded what we did in the studio. There again, I think the Crown Royal. Charlie had a hard time letting go, and being the singer that he was very well capable of being, and being the showman on top of it with it. We go into the studio, we had X amount of dollars to spend, we had played a bunch of live shows, saved up some cash, we went in, Dave Melanich, most hospitable, fantastic person that I could possibly imagine, was very welcoming, kind of threw him for a loop. I don't think, he had recorded some different type of artists, but I think when we came to visit him, it was a completely different story for him. And Gary added some technical issues with him, because he had so much stuff. It was badass when it was set up, but it was just getting there. So, that was a challenge in the studio. I guess just finding that hole, because in the studio we all talked about it. I think we all felt the same way. You felt very secluded in the studio. It was very dry, and it was like you were performing to the wall, and a lot of the Mindseed greatest why we kept songs around was, we played them live and we're like, holy shit, that was just amazing. So in the studio it was really tough for us, and I think in the end it kind of showed our demise, because of everything was there as far as what was recorded. Dave was phenomenal in the studio, and what we turned out was, he says, I want this to sound like what you want it to sound like, and I don't think we all quite understood. We should have walked away from it for a while and went back and listened to it, done our couple month hiatus maybe, went back and listened to it and engineered it then, because I think by the end of the process we were so burnt out on the repetition of the studio that, I don't know, maybe it just broke us as as far as what we were doing, and made us really overanalyze everything that we were doing. So when we got done there, it was really hard to walk away from that and go, well, where do we go from there? Because we just broke every single thing that we did down to every little blip of microscopic.
January 2008, we go into Guitar Sound Studio. Dave Melanich, the owner, great guy. made us feel right to home. Man, we spent, it wasn't too long, a couple months. He did an awesome job engineering. So we're in the studio. We didn't have a whole lot of time, so I only got one, maybe 2 takes on the vocals, which I wasn't too happy about, but what can you do again? It was interesting. I personally had never been in the studio, and I don't think any of the other guys were either, so I learned quite a bit off Dave.
The Mindseed studio sessions were a blast. It was winter time, because a couple of times when we came home from practices, we had gotten 3-4 inches of snow and made our trek back home kind of fun. That was kind of an interesting experience for all the band members to be riding in the same vehicle. We left all of our stuff at the studio while we were recording, and yeah, there was a lot. It was a lot of fun. It was a pretty big learning experience for all of us. Myself for sure. I really didn't think I could get that great big ass drum set in that small little cubby that he had for a recording studio, but we managed and had a lot of fun. And Dave was great. He did do a fine job, way better than we could have ever done by ourselves or whatnot. So yeah, that was fun. That was a good time.
Less than 2 months after they started recording, Mindseed released their self-titled debut EP under the Backwood Earth Media label on March 1st, 2009. The band continued to tour that spring and summer, and eventually started branching out to the Tri-Cities bar scene. But as with many bands, the inner turmoil and animosity builds between the members, and with levels at an all-time high for Mindseed. These fabulous four decided to go their own way. And although they never officially broke up, as of November 1st, 2009, they announced on their MySpace page that they are officially on hiatus until further notice.
I would have to say, for me, Summerfest, when we were headlining it, and they had the 2-for-1 beers up till 8 o'clock, and Charlie brought the half pint of Crown, and we were drinking that and drinking the beers, and then I don't remember the girl's name, but she came to almost all of our shows for a while, and she brought us a 5th of Crown. I thought we were all drinking it on stage. Apparently we weren't. It was just, after a while, it was just me and Charlie drinking it. But the bottle was gone, and I don't remember the last 5 or 6 songs we played. Mindseed went on hiatus for a bunch of different reasons. At the time, I had gotten divorced like 2 years prior, and my ex-wife was trying to move my kids away. So I had a lot of personal issues, and her lawyer wanted to use Mindseed against me. Plus there was a lot of, we had just been together for so long that there was just so much tension building up in the band, and I got to the point where I just didn't even want to pick sides anymore. I just wanted to play, and if we weren't going to play, there's no point in being there. Everybody was just warring, and egos got too big, and everybody, including myself, and it just wasn't fun anymore.
Mindseed played and did a lot of practicing. We also drank a whole lot of Crown Royal. My drum set became, for about the last 2 years when we really just kind of weren't gigging and just practicing, my drum set became the hanging place for all the Crown Royal bags that seemed to appear rather frequently. I don't blame that on myself, but I may have something to do with it. At one time, I think I cleaned off my kit for a gig that we had, and it was maybe close to a year's worth of Crown Royal bags, but there was 57 bags on there. As you know, there's only 52 weeks in a year, and we practiced maybe once a week, so I guess a few weeks we had an additional practice, maybe. So
That's just a good summer.
it was just a couple of good summers and part of a winter, I guess. And it got to be where it was just kind of every practice was the same. We'd come in and we'd talk about writing new music, or we'd talk about trying to do this, or we'd talk about trying to do that. We'd end up just drinking a bunch of booze, and it just got stale. It got really stale, and nobody really wanted to put forth the effort that we needed to keep on rocking. So we just kind of went south for a little while, and I've been that way ever since. We love to drink a little Crown Royal, and it seemed to have its effects every once in a while on our stage presence. I remember one night Chuck there, he decided he was going to party on like Wayne and Garth. He got so pissed drunk, it was terrible. We come back, we did our sound check, left there, went to the bar down the road. All of us went, started drinking, and we were all drinking pretty heavy, but it seemed to affect Charlie a hell of a lot more than it did anybody else. So we get back, get up on stage, and we start to get our stuff all organized and set up, and we're about ready to play, and all of a sudden Charlie just pretty much does a nosedive right into my drum set. Knocked all kinds of shit out of whack. I'm like, what the heck, man? What are you doing? So I get Charlie out of there, and about a couple seconds later, here he come again. And just plowed right into it. We finally got Chuck headed in the right direction. We start to play our first song. Charlie puked on the stage and pretty much couldn't really speak into the microphone, so he just kind of stood in the corner, and Craig took over, which kudos to Craig, because he was always good for that.
Really hard to deny the fact that our band had a Crown Royal problem. But we had a really good time with it, you know. It started out as a really fun thing. I don't know if it finished that way, but it started out as a really fun thing. And Charlie and I go back on the Crown Royal days. That's where our initial demise, as you'll say it, came from. But it's a beast, and if you allow it, will consume you and destroy you. But I guess that's any drug. Not to sound cliche, but we had a good time with Crown Royal. You know, it was fun to bring a pint out, and when we first started writing music, and a couple of times we'd tip back a couple, and you know, write some really good tunes. And then I think after a while, it kind of stuck us in that rut where we couldn't go any further. You know, like I say, if we could have toned ourselves down, there is, you know, it's been, I'm sure I'm not the only one to say that there towards the end there was some animosity. I personally, I don't know. If I can take credit or blame for it, I guess whichever side you'd call it. But yeah, Crown Royal was definitely a huge part of Mindseed, and they should have sponsored us. I mean, that's probably how we would have went somewhere, is to throw that shit at them and be like, look, you know, this is what we do on Crown. Make that your advertising campaign, you know. This is what we do on Crown. What do you do?
I remember one show in particular where I had a pint out in my van. Drank most of that myself prior to sound check. We do sound check, we go down to another bar and continue to just pile on the Crown, shots of Crown. We knew the people that worked at this bar, so the band was getting shots for nothing. So Crown Royal it was. Back to the other bar, right before we go on stage, a few more shots, and I end up puking on stage. That was, I remember staying on my own 2 feet the whole show. There was a few times I fell into the drums, but you know, what can you do? Leaning up against the bass player, Craig, elbows me a few times, but all in all, I think it was a good show. You know, it's Crown Royal's a crazy drug. I remember doing swan dives and not landing very gracefully. It seems like every show somebody got just wasted. At least one of us. It was either me, Craig, or Roger. Sometimes Gary would get a little carried away, but not as often as me, Craig, or Roger. Out of the three of us, at any given show, we were either all drunk or at least one of us was just wasted. 2009, I think November, I posted on MySpace that Mindseed was on hiatus. And that's how it's been ever since. That's, 9, 10, that's 3 years ago. We'd been together 6 years. We wrote a lot of crazy-ass music. But like with any relationship, for a better lack of a term, you just start getting sick of these bastards. I don't know how else to put it. I love each and every one of them, but at the same time, at that point, I just wanted to strangle each and every one of them. It turned into just not being productive. We would just get together and get shit-faced, and there's a lot of animosity, and after 3-4 years, it starts fading away, and
A 10-year reunion, I think we could maybe do, depending on what we want to do. If we want to get together and try to redo the songs we did, maybe improve them a little bit, maybe do something different. I'm kind of open on the whole aspect. Of course, when we first get together, the first thing we got to do is forget about all the shit in the past, all of the little nitpicky kind of things that made us go on hiatus in the first place, and say, okay, sit down, what do you guys want to do? Okay, let's aim for that, let's do that, and just do it, instead of get together and bitch about who's what. But yeah, I think it would be fun, man. I think if everybody came in with an open mind and put forth some effort, we'd probably have a pretty good time and do a couple shows or something, just for fun.
10 years. I miss it. I mean, the songs we wrote I thought were incredible. I thought they were great. Hell, my kid still listens to the CD over and over again. I would love to get back and play those songs again, and just because when it was just the four of us, after a while, the animosity had gotten so big, but all four of us are still really good friends. And I think we could jump back in it and just take off from where we left. But we all have personal lives, kids, jobs, and stuff like that, so it's difficult, but I'd like to do a reunion show. I think it'd be a lot of fun.
There's been talk of a reunion. I know none of us are really super opposed to it. I think realistically it's just a matter of logistics, but I mean, who's to say? Keep watching Facebook. I don't know. It could happen. It might not happen. We'll just have to wait and see.
Oh, I genuinely, with my love for that music, my genuine, true love for that music, I would definitely consider it. But then you could also run into that conundrum of where we left off, to walk separate, and not even to say the Crown Royal aspect of it, because I'm sure that'll show up. I mean, we all drink, so. But the other conundrum that I find in that is to step into that last spot where we left off, where we come in and say, we know we're going to do an hour show, so we've, reformulate a nice tight hour of Mindseed, or a nice tight 50 minutes of Mindseed stuff and say, well, maybe we should write a new song. And maybe fall into that, well, what do we do now? What do we do now? But I think to do just, if we could do do a Rebels show and do a Ode show in February of 2013, I say fuck yeah. But I guess that would come down to who's on board, And I guess for me it would kind of come down to who's on board.
With the 10-year anniversary coming up in February 2013, rumors of a reunion show have been seen on such social networks as Facebook, Twitter, and MySpace. And with no official word from the band, we will simply have to wait and see.